Definitely excited to be here. I think we've had a good 3 days and counting, where we've talked about all kinds of things happening in India, India advancing as a product nation. And then, of course, for any product company coming out of India, the ambition is to go global. And that's where I think today's session comes in. We have a very interesting lineup of speakers, and I'll request the coordinators to please send Aman on stage. And today we will talk about how go-to-market strategy itself has changed in the last 18 months. And our first speaker is Aman Gour. He is the founder CEO of TurboHire. And interestingly, Aman's entrepreneurial journey started when he was very young. I think he borrowed money from his dad to start a firecracker stand. Aman, did you return the money?
Yeah, I returned the money, I lost them, and made money on top of it to buy firecrackers for me as well. So that was a good
Okay,
gig.
excellent. Okay. And Aman runs a company called TurboHire, and we'll come to it in a minute in terms of what they do. But he's working on a B2B product, and they are selling globally. So welcome, Aman. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
Next,
Kaustubh.
I'll request the coordinators to please send Roby on stage. Yeah, hi. Welcome, Roby. Roby John is the founder of SuperGaming. So, from a company which makes it easier to hire all over the world to somebody who's getting people to spend time having fun. Welcome, Robbie. And Robbie's been actually at gaming from the time the first iPhone was joined. iPhone was launched. So I think that's a great journey. And they've recreated games like Pac-Man, the original, which I think many of us who started playing games on the computer would certainly remember. And two interesting games like Silly Royale and now launching Battle Royale. So we would love to hear more from you, Robbie. Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Um,
Next, could we please have Tarun Sharma on stage next? Yeah, hi.
Hi,
Welcome, Tarun.
hi,
Thank you for
Kaustubh.
joining us.
Thank you for having me
Tarun
here.
is, yeah, thank you. Tarun is the founder of Yodda, a parent care company. So he actually takes the hassle out of, helping parents if you live away from them, whether you are living in India or outside. And, certainly this need has never been stronger in the last 18 months when many of us were actually stuck in a city different from our parents. So certainly that's a very apt company. And he's actually been at this quite a while. I think he was the CEO of BMC Software. Then he's written a couple of books on technology and e-commerce. And he actually went bankrupt and started all over again. So I think we would love to hear from you on what keeps you going. But thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you, Kaustubh. It's my pleasure to be here. And I also want to thank NASSCOM for inviting me to this. This product conclave is one of the most prestigious events that there is in the technology world. And I just want to say a big thank you to them. And thank you for hosting this event. Of course, I see a familiar face. Roby John and I work together, and I'm glad to have him on the stage here with me. And Amana and I are co-brothers in our industry.
Excellent, and thank you for acknowledging. Certainly it's my fifth or sixth year now being part of the NASSCOM Product Conclave, and every year I think it's been exciting to see more and more people like you actually pitching in, building companies, and scaling them. So it's certainly been an exciting journey. So with that, what we will do is we'll jump right in, and we'll start off with a couple of questions where we'll go around. If the audience, if you want to share any questions, please type in the chat. We'll try to accommodate one or two, and then we'll go from there. So, I think what is on everybody's mind is, I think all our ways of doing work itself changed, right? How we worked, how we built products, how we took them to market, everything changed in the last 18 months. Something none of us really anticipated. And,
Yes.
I think it was good for some, not so good for some. Everybody had to evolve and change. So really, we would love to hear from each of you, and we'll kind of go in the order that I see just to avoid the confusion. We'll go Aman, Tarun, Robbie, whenever we need to. So please talk a little bit about, what is your company? What do you do when you started, briefly? And then talk to us a little bit about, what changed for you as a business in terms of how you go to market, and was that good for you, bad for you? What did you have to change? Anything interesting you learned or observed? I think that would be very interesting. Over to you, Aman.
Thank you so much, Kaustubh. And just like Tarun has mentioned, it's a pleasure to be here. Um, 2 years back, I was on the audience side of things and loved all the interactions that were happening. So good to be sharing the journey. TurboHire. So TurboHire is a recruitment automation platform. We are B2B, we are a B2B SaaS platform being used by 70 plus companies in India and North America. Talking about our COVID experiences, it's been interesting because the first wave hit us when we were pre-product market fit, and almost we were about to shut shop. So there was not enough cash in the bank to pay salary of people when the first wave hit, and most of the customers dropped because that was the first knee-jerk reaction that the market faced, where cut cost, stop hiring. And that was interesting. We launched a few initiatives that helped us stay afloat, but very soon we raised our first round of funding. Uh, Market saw that okay, there was some settlement in revenue and so on, but then the second wave happened. Uh, we thought that this time we were prepared. So the number of customers did not reduce. We made a personal call to every customer, ensuring that things will be all right. But the growth slowed down definitely because COVID, I think, created three different kinds of companies. The first kind got accelerated because of the war going digital. The shares of Microsoft I own sort of went through roof. Then second kind is the kind of companies that have to shut shop in the travel domain. As we can see, a lot of companies struggled. We were somewhere in the middle where we saw decline in the growth, and as startup stands for growth, that was definitely not a good period. Um, what we did interestingly is instead of trying to sell our product, we started making calls to our customers just to lend a ear to them during the second wave of COVID, which was definitely very destructive. We have seen what happened in Delhi, Mumbai, and otherwise. That really helped us build our uh, internal culture, which was on customer centricity. And now we are seeing that, given that we are now seeing COVID in the rear view mirror, and my fingers are crossed that the third wave doesn't happen. But that the effort spent in the first wave, which was about building product, to the second wave, which is about ensuring good relationship with customers, now paying off with the current growth in revenue that we are seeing. Um,
Okay,
yeah, we launched
that's
our
great. Thank you.
yeah.
Sorry, we'll keep the ball rolling. So we will
Perfect.
get some questions in. Yeah. Sorry for that. Yeah. Go ahead, Tarun. Please kind of tell us a little bit about
Sure.
your venture and how things changed.
Sure. So Yodda, as you pointed out earlier, is a premium parent care company, and it falls into the category of elder care. But essentially, we call it a parent care company, even though we take care of elders, is because we expect that we are the proxies to the children whose parents live here, but they are not able to be with the parents either because of life choices or career choices or any other reason. So I know everybody wants to take care of the parents, but many times they're not able to. So we become the children of those parents. So the whole idea is that anything that a parent would call a child for, they call us for that. And by call, I mean, of course, there are multiple ways for them to get in touch with us, right from they can call a phone, there are two different lines, an emergency hotline. We do emergency handling 24 by 7, but we also provide regular services from 9:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., for which there's a separate line. We have an app for the parents, and when you say that, people get scared, but it's literally a button in the app. They just have to press the button. One tap is a service, and an extended press is an emergency. We also, people can reach out to us through WhatsApp or Alexa. Of late, we did Alexa integration. We've done a Android watch and then smartwatches coming up. So a mechanism for the parents to reach out to us when they need to. And then we provide those services primarily through aggregators. So we've got a very wide variety of partners in place to make sure that, but these are all curated partners and partners that have a pan India presence and good reputation, because at the end of the day, we take care of parents and we don't want any service delivery issues with them. As far as COVID
Sure.
itself is concerned, I think one of the reasons the company was born was for two reasons. One is I lost my mom to cancer last year, And I went through the whole exercise of what it takes to deal with somebody that has a chronic illness like cancer. I lost my dad to paralysis before that. And the second is COVID, who had just had, my mom died on the 21st of March, 22nd was lockdown. So the company was actually born in the COVID time. And then the way it impacted us is that we had built out the technology. We were getting ready for a launch early in March, April timeframe. And I had to pull back that launch because we weren't very sure, and there were a lot of things that were not in place. Oxygen supplies weren't there. That meant that the kids would have a false sense of security that we are taking care of them, but we ourselves were not able to handle the situation. And so it's very rare for a startup to launch and feel pull back. We had to do that, unfortunately, and we had to pull back. And we used that time then to strengthen our software stack. In this particular case, we have no room for error, so my software has to work 100% of the times. And so we spend that time making sure that our software is now very, very reliable, and the operations, and we put together lots more partnerships in place, and that's the only impact COVID had. But as far as go-to-market is concerned, we never saw anything before that, and so we've done all the innovation that we had to do right in the COVID timeframe, and we're still experimenting.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and sorry for your loss. And I appreciate that, in spite of that, you actually chose to solve this problem, which I think many of us in this age bracket are facing today, where parents live in different cities, if not in a different country. So thank you for sharing that. Over to you, Robbie. I'm going to hazard a guess here, and that people started playing more games during.
I don't know whether I should say this, but COVID has actually been a different environment for us because a couple of things. We started a company 14 years ago when the iPhone first launched. Kind of kept our head down, kept building for it. So whatever we built for the last 10 years, kind of it was tested to its limits in the last 12 to 18 months because all of our servers were breaking. Everything that we had to do had to scale up 2x, 3x, 5x. If we were doing 10,000 concurrent, we were now doing 100,000 concurrent. We only, as a company, my name is Roby. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SuperGaming. We're a company that makes a real-time games platform that powers all of our games. We started SuperGaming a year before COVID, so we actually launched in February of 2019 with the idea of games are a new social network. We saw across all of our games that people now choose to hang out in games versus hanging out in a regular social network. That's the natural demise of social networks, people hanging out in games. We sought to build for it. We were in the middle of building all of it when COVID quarantine happened, and then we saw our numbers jump through the roof. So we've actually had 100 million users jump in on our platforms across the games. We call it platform because we have a bunch of games that we power, including the original Pac-Man. So like the original Pac-Man that we all played as kids is actually made by a small Indian company. And that's something that we're kind of, proud of because that's one of the oldest games ever made. That's a little bit about it. In the early quarantine days, we saw a lot of usage, but that hasn't ceased. What we're amazed by is that all of our numbers continue to grow because I think you need 12 to 18 months to kind of establish a full-time habit. And with the extended quarantine, whatever people were playing has just gotten extended.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And, we have about 12, 13 minutes left. I'll request each of you to keep your answers to a minute. So we'll get a few questions in. Let me start. I think, each of you shared your experiences. I think, Aman, you had a up and down and then kind of recovered. For Robbie, I think it was up and up. I think Tarun has no reference before that because that's when you started. So, that's very interesting. But, talk to us a little bit about, what is your strategy for going global, right? Like, how are you doing? Obviously, you are doing business in India and outside. And what has been the lesson learned or, something that our audience could use, right? Like, which could be interesting that you observed during this time. Go ahead, Aman.
So I can definitely share Kaustubh from the B2B SaaS point of view. We built our initial GTM in India, got customers, built lead generation funnels. And then when we thought that we'll go global, we tried replicating the same lead generation mechanisms. Without surprise, it failed. We were relying on paid ads in India, did not work in North America. That's where we realized that things will work differently in different geographies. And even the product. So we in India, you have the concept of OTP, which we all know, which is like OTP. But when we launched in US, the first customer wrote a long email to us saying that what is an OTP? So we had to change even the verbiage in the product to get the product ready for the global audience. So the entire 9 yards of product readiness, compliance, generating funnels for distribution sort of took its shape over the course of last 6 months. But I think as people say that companies take rebirth when they go global, we went through that, launched a different product or an optimized product for the audience, built lead generation engine which were uh, serving the right unit economics from day zero. But the new model cost that we are
Sure.
seeing from India to the world is India, Southeast Asia, then North America, rather than a direct jump. That's just an observation, but let's see what time says.
Right, right. Yeah, no, very interesting. And, I appreciate you acknowledging the fact that, what worked here did not work there, which is actually
Absolutely.
true for many companies. And, you have to learn, and it's not just the go to market, but it's even the product. Tarun, would you like to share your
Yes,
experience? I know
of
there are a
course.
lot of people who live abroad who have parents
Yes,
living in India.
exactly.
So, how
Exactly.
has
So
that played out?
it's playing out. I mean, it is still playing out. So
Hmm.
we had to think global right from the start. And as Aman pointed out, I was smiling here because I had the same issue. When somebody registers on a platform, they get an OTP. And one of my friend who tried to do that said, "What is an OTP?" And then we had to change it to verification code. And then there
Yeah.
were some regulations on AWS which would not let an OTP go. So I learned some of those lessons up front. But essentially, so in that sense, our customers, and by that I define the people that pay for the service are the kids, and they are all abroad. They are, for that matter, all over the world. And the people who receive the service, I mean, I don't like to call them customers. They're parents. We are in a social world. I don't want to think of them as just somebody you make money out of. So, but the delivery happens in India. And so on the delivery side, we have plans to go global, but I think it's going to take a while. India itself is a huge market. We are in Pune, we are launching Hyderabad in Jan, Navi Mumbai soon after that. So by the time I increase my delivery footprint in India, it's going to take me a while. And then when we go abroad also, we have to have a very different service catalog. Because in the US, I think a lot of it is not about service delivery or emergency handling. It's about emotional well-being and things like that. So I have to have a very different service catalog, and it depends on the infrastructure. So I am not going to casually sit here and say we are going global. I would love to, but we're going to take some time. Our challenge on the go-to-market side, knowing that our children, the Indian diaspora, spread all over the world. How do you now segment it? Because if we start to say that we are going to go after every kid all over the world, I don't have enough marketing dollars to spend on it. So I almost have to pick a segment and say, even though kids are all over the world, I'm only going after San Jose, San Francisco, Chicago. I know pockets where the Indians live abroad. And then there is the digital part of it, which we're working on. But there is also a very physical part. Like we're running radio ads right now. 6 times a day, there's a radio ad that plays on those channels which Indian listeners listen to. We At some point, when we probably raise the next round of funding, we'll start thinking about playing our ads in movie theaters. We know that Indian movies launch all over the globe, and when people go for a Shahrukh Buster, we'll probably play our ads there. So for me, even though we live in a virtual world, there is still a very large part of traditional marketing that comes into play over here. And I need to make sure that we are geared up. But my problem is just to make sure we are focused on a segment in a geography, knowing that the opportunity might be global.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. And I think you shared that you may not be ready to go global yet, and as well as that the product mix and the service mix will change.
Yes.
Plus, the interesting thought that I mean, traditional marketing is still the way to connect with a lot of your potential customers.
Yes.
So very interesting, because often in the tech world we assume that everything will be tech, and so will the marketing, and so will the
Yeah.
connecting. But
Right.
it's true that it's not always the case. No, great. Thanks for sharing that. Robbie, tell us a little bit about what had changed in terms of how you are going to market.
Sure,
And
sure.
I know earlier in the conversation you talked a lot about influencer marketing and YouTubers and things like that.
Sure.
Influencer marketing works for B2B, it's just the influencers are different. So we would love to hear your experience.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So first is, from a company perspective, we've been global day one. We started with the iOS platform. Earlier, everybody abroad had, iPhones. We saw what succeeded there and then brought it to emerging markets. So we have players in all 192 countries all over the world that are legally allowed to kind of, have games in. So it's kind of funny. Our team speaks 34 languages on customer support. Most of our games are translated in 23 languages at least. So we're a global business from day one. Games are a global business. Like a Pac-Man 93% of Americans recognize it. It's recognized by 70% of people globally. So that's kind of something that we do. But what we all of our growth, our first 300 million downloads or so came in all organically. But over the last 2 years, it's kind of been figuring out, hey, how do we grow in a particular segment faster? How do we talk about our games faster? So we had our first marketing dollars only 2 years ago, just a little bit before COVID, and we've kind of seen that what resonates well is kind of using those influencers that players relate to. In the last 12 to 18 months, the number of streamers on YouTube and Twitch have increased or quadrupled in most places. And we're kind of using them, so to say, as brand ambassadors, channels to talk to people about playing our game and sharing their experiences. Yesterday, we actually had a YouTuber, a semi-famous YouTuber, talk about our game and played our game with his mom. 1 million people saw it on YouTube in less than 12 hours. 100,000 people installed it
Wow.
in less than 8 hours. So that's kind of what keeps our servers buzzing all day long.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that, Robbie. And certainly YouTuber streaming, I think, is a whole new thing. I know my kids are into it, so I see them streaming.
Exposing a few other problems at home. Both my kids have decided to become YouTubers.
That's fascinating. I think it's very easy to get on YouTube, right? So why not? And in fact, you will see a lot of marketing experts recommending YouTube to everyone, not realizing that not everybody may have the kind of camera presence. But hey, who are we to say that, right? Okay. So that's great. I think a lot of points you echoed. Hey, what is your right segment? Who are you going after? What are they looking for? Whether it's a product or how you reach them. And then where are they getting their information, right? So a lot of gamers are getting their information from the YouTubers. People are getting their information wherever they are, in case of Tarun. And then of course, in Aman, it's the B2B, right? So how do you actually work your way? And very interesting stories on the OTP. I think in India, we are so used to the OTP. I think when you do a bank transaction, you need at least 5 OTPs before you can even move anywhere. So, of course, something to learn there. I think we have about 3.5 minutes. So what I'd like to do is, kind of get some closing tips and remarks from each of you, about a minute. So then I'll have 20 seconds to summarize. Is anything you would like to share with our audience? Any others, aspiring founders or those who are founders, getting started early in their journey, in terms of either something they should do that you didn't, or something they should avoid which you learned the hard way. I think that would be very interesting. Aman, you want to share something quickly? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So the list of mistakes that I've done is very long. So I can just share two things on the top of that list. On the top of that list, the first one is not to fight the human bias. So this we realized, Kaustubh, when we started outbound marketing. We were using initial names like Sunil or Fahad and so on. But the time we changed the names from Sunil and Fahad to Johnson, the reply rate doubled. The email which was receiving a negative reply started receiving the same positive reply. That is where I think the first thing is to not fight the human bias while building the GTM and just stick to what works there. The second thing that really worked for us, like the three GTM models that exist for B2B, is like replace, adopt, and integrate. Now, as founders, we are often very proud of what we have built. So we end up saying that, yeah, we can replace even a market leader without realizing that on the other side, a user is actually
Sorry,
married to the
I'm going to have to cut you off, and I'm going
yeah.
to hand it over to Tarun,
Yeah.
so we can still close. Yeah.
I'll
Go ahead,
quickly.
Tarun. Thank you. Yeah.
I learned a lot of lessons very quick. We were very very young because the service just launched in September. But in that time, we learned that we had to be agile. I had to be very agile on the pricing front because a lot of the requirements customers had, right? Parents live abroad for 6 months, and so what happens to the service during those 6 months? We had to put suspension plans in, things like that. We made a mistake where we went mobile first and then quickly realized that certain things are better done on a laptop and certain things are better done on a mobile. So we had to redo all our systems. When we looked at our ad campaigns from Facebook, Google, all of that, we realized that people were not going to the site where the content is, they were going to the corporate site. And it's realized it's because 57% of the traffic comes in from mobile phones. Now, even though our website is responsive, the floating bar, which actually takes you to about our services, disappeared when people scrolled up. And the only link they saw was a corporate site. So they went to the wrong place. So while we were sending people, they were going to the wrong place, so we had to do that. We had to look at simple things like when I launched the app, it said for parents and for kids. And we realized that people meant for kids meant we had services for kids. And so nobody was going there. What we had to do is say for you,
So yeah.
for parents, for you.
Sure.
So it's in the small things that you have to adapt.
Right. Right. Thank you for sharing that. Robbie, you would like to add what you learned or what people
I'll
should do or
summarize:
not do?
differentiate, differentiate, differentiate. Unless you
Ah,
have a clear differentiation between why people should play your game, how is it different from anybody else, you're not going to attract the right audience. People might install your game, but they might not stay on it. The only thing that we've kind of learned is differentiating who we are and what we're doing. We're taking on some very big games on with a new game coming out called Indus, but by setting it in a universe that's made in India or Indo-futuristic India, that's kind of how we kind of are differentiating what we do.
sure. Sure. Okay. So I think we are over time. So I'll just quickly summarize. First of all, thank you all for joining us, and thank you NASSCOM for this forum. I'll start with what Robbie said. Differentiate, and I really like that thought, right? Because for independent of what offering you have, there are always 10 or 100 or 500 others doing the same thing, and what you stand for, whether you're marketing in India or globally, is of course critical. I appreciate what Aman said is don't fight the bias. That's very interesting because one is the way the world is and the way you want it to be, and there is always a gap. And operating with what you actually see in the world, I think, is critical, and that certainly applies when you go global. So I appreciate that thought. And Tarun, to your point, being agile, being responsive, and also checking all the details, right? Because there is a huge opportunity with today's technology to learn continuously from what your customers are doing, what they like, what they not like. And I think anybody running a product, marketing, or go to market, it's important for them to be continuously responding.
Yeah.
So great. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for sharing your experiences, and it was a pleasure to speak with each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaustubh.
Thank you, NASSCOM.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.